At 25, Whei Zhang was very accustomed to the luxury and wealth she had lived in since birth. Her mother passed away when she was 7, but her father did everything in his power to ensure his beloved daughter never lacked anything. Tao Zhang had always been a determined man, so after graduating from university, he directed all his efforts towards developing his own business. By the age of 29, he had already amassed his first million, and 13 years later, he multiplied his capital several times over. However, while he was preoccupied with investments and profit margins, Mr. Zhang had to entrust his daughter's education to the various helpers who worked in the family's household over the years. Wei ended up not being emotionally close to her father, but she knew she lived very comfortably. She didn't really understand or have much interest in what her father did. She only knew that it provided enough money to maintain her entire lifestyle. Consequently, she never learned to respect her father's business. When she came of age, all she efficiently knew how to do was spend the money earned by her father, a significant amount, but one that was built through years of meticulous work. Of course, Tao Zhang tried to persuade his daughter to change her lifestyle, learn something about the family business, and perhaps even take on a role of responsibility there. But the opportune moment to instill certain values in the girl had passed. It had now become very difficult to change the way Wei viewed reality and life's challenges, because, truth be told, she hadn't encountered many difficulties up to that point. Everything was resolved either with the help of one of the household staff or with her father's money. Wei could make an amount equal to a lawyer's or manager's monthly salary disappear in just one visit to a handbag and shoe store. Moreover, the young woman didn't seem the least bit achevé to flaunt or squander her father's money. On social media, she had numerous followers who wanted to precisely keep up with her day-to-day luxuries and spending sprees, and that was a perfect excuse she gave herself to continue living in that empty and frivolous manner. However, Tao Zhang grew tired of trying to talk to his daughter and seeing no change. So he decided to arrange a marriage for her with the son of a congressman, which would strengthen his position in business and provide reliable political support from the influential son-in-law. It was on an April night that Mr. Zhang broached the subject with his daughter. "Wei, you know I'm not as young anymore, and business drains my energy. I want to ensure that you'll always have everything you need in life until your last days," he told her. Wei was taken aback. Not only did she not understand what her father really meant, but it also seemed like he knew he would die or fall ill in the next few days or months. So, looking deep into his daughter's eyes, Mr. Zhang gathered his strength and hopes and got straight to the point. He said he wanted her to get married and that he had already found the perfect suitor, a politician. Wei thought her father was joking or going crazy, but he kept arguing. And then she realized he was serious. Things had gone too far for Wei. She knew Jiwu. He was the son of a partner of her father's, but Wei and Ji had never been friends, and she had never considered the possibility that this man could one day be her husband. She didn't know what to say to her father. Wei felt a mixture of shock and anger at her father's proposal. She wasn't willing to accept this arranged marriage, which seemed more like a business transaction than a union based on love and compatibility. However, her lack of reaction and voice were understood by Mr. Zhang as an acceptance of the proposal, and so the father began making calls and working on the same day to fulfill his plan. The first person Tao Zhang talked to was his partner, Mr. Wu, Ji's father, who also found the proposal wonderful. The Wu family's business would also be in a better position with this union of their children. Planning the wedding was a long and meticulous process. Wei Zhang, as always, left all the responsibility of organization to her father and the people he designated for the task. The hired wedding planner even commented that she had never worked on such a fancy wedding without the bride's participation, and so she prayed that all her decisions and those of the team would end up pleasing Wei. They rented the best hotel in the city for the moment of union and a Greek chef to take care of the entire buffet that would be served to the guests. When the wedding day arrived, all the local elite gathered there. Ji Wu, the groom, had already taken his place at the altar, and the guests eagerly awaited the triumphant entrance of the bride. They glanced at the clock from time to time and cast curious looks to the back of the hall, expecting that at any moment the doors would open and announce Whei Zhang's presence. But time passed, and the bride did not appear. The guests couldn't understand what could cause such a delay. Tao Zhang had lived that day intensely. He hadn't thought of anything else but the wedding of his only daughter to his friend and partner's fortune heir. But Mr. Zhang hadn't reached where he was by chance. He knew how to identify a crisis. When the delay became too noticeable and neither he nor any of his staff could reach Wei by phone, the businessman realized that he was involved in a scandal in front of the entire financial elite of the city. "I'll be frank with you, Tao. I didn't expect such behavior from your daughter. Can you imagine what people will think of me now?" Mr. Wu said, making a tremendous effort not to insult his friend right there. Tao Zhang was furious, but he didn't let it show. He understood that the responsibility for all this embarrassment was solely his. After all, he had arranged that marriage and made all the preparations. Wei, as usual, wouldn't have any accounts to settle with all those people who were left standing in the hotel ballroom. When he returned home, the father found Wei sound asleep in her room, as if it had been any other day. It was obvious that the young woman didn't care about the damage done to her father's reputation. The fact was that Wei had no idea how her life would change from that point on. That night, Tao Zhang stayed in his office until almost midnight, analyzing all possible options on how to contain or correct his daughter's utterly reprehensible and spoiled behavior. Mr. Zhang understood that anything he did beforehand would be ineffective because, unfortunately, he had lost the position of authority in her life and mind. Before going to bed, the businessman made the only decision he deemed right for the moment. He knew it would drastically change Wei's life, but after what she did, he saw no other way. He would have to show her once and for all that she, like no one else on the face of the earth, could do as they pleased without suffering consequences. The next morning, Wei was still asleep as usual when her father woke up and tried to talk to her. Unsuccessful, he left the house and called her later, forcing the young woman to wake up. Irritated, Wei held the phone to her face and didn't have time to convey her dissatisfaction to her father. "Daughter," Mr. Zhang began, "I'm going on a very long business trip. I have no idea when I'll be back, but that doesn't matter right now. What you need to know is that all your credit cards have been canceled for now. I bought a house for you in Tongren. That's where you'll be living for a while. Your security has already received the instructions, and today you're moving to your new home." Mr. Zhang abruptly hung up the phone before his daughter had a chance to respond. Then Wei tried to call her father back, but couldn't reach him. Either the call didn't go through, or the phone rang until the time ran out. But Wei didn't worry too much. After all, what were the chances of her father taking such action? She thought it was just another one of his threats, nothing new in their relationship. Wei was fully aware of the consequences of not showing up at her own wedding and knew it would enrage her father. But she thought that a few days would pass, and soon he would calm down again. Everything would go back to normal. Wei planned to stay in bed a little longer, maybe even sleep a little more. However, her plans were interrupted by a heavy and authoritative knock on the door. It was the mansion's security guard, informing Wei that she had only 30 minutes to get ready and that Mr. Zhang's orders were clear. If Wei didn't cooperate and pack her things, the security guard had the authority to pack the woman's belongings himself, choosing what he thought was best for her to take to Tongren. The house chosen by Mr. Zhang wasn't very large, and the effects of time were apparent in its paint and hardware. The security guard wasted no time, and as soon as he got out of the vehicle, he had already started carrying the woman's luggage into the house. She said she had much more to do on behalf of her employer and hoped to get home before nightfall. As the car rounded the curve on the dirt road and sped toward the highway, Wei was certain that this was not a prank or a scare from her father. It was real. She had crossed the line and was left to fend for herself in that place she could only define as dreadful and forgotten by God. She felt empty inside and sad. She wanted to cry, but her pride wouldn't allow it. In fact, what she was feeling was pure hatred, like she hadn't felt since she was a child. As she opened the front door, Whei noticed that the house was even worse on the inside. All the furniture was old and covered with a thick layer of dust. Cobwebs adorned the corners of the walls. In certain spots, the wooden floor creaked beneath her feet. It would take at least a month to clean everything, but it had to start. After all, she would need to sleep and eat there, unless a miracle happened. For a young woman who had never needed to use a broom, mop, and cleaning products for more than 5 minutes in her life, cleaning that house was an exhausting and complex task. She only took breaks to drink water and eat some snacks she had brought from the mansion. Even when she ate, it was with anxiety because of the hatred she felt, which somehow gave the spoiled young woman the strength to continue the task. Whei only calmed down around midnight when she finally saw that the house was reasonably clean and minimally habitable. She was so tired that she simply couldn't find the strength to make any more food for herself. So, she went to bed on an empty stomach. The next morning, Whei was awakened by a mysterious knock on the door. She had no idea who it could be. She felt weak and hungry. Upon opening the door, she saw a frail-looking lady standing at the door holding a basket. "Hello, dear," the lady said. "My name is Fang Huang, I'm your neighbor, and I brought some food because I know there's nothing in this house." Wei smiled at the lady, who seemed very friendly and calm. The young woman wasn't sure what to do, but she ended up taking the basket the elderly lady had brought and invited her in. Fang saw the clean floors and imagined how much time and effort that girl must have invested. They sat on the only sofa in the small living room and talked. Fang knew that Wei would stay there for a while and that to support herself, Wei would need a job. Wei was shaken. Until that moment in her life, she had never held any occupation. What did that lady mean? With great tact, Fang mentioned that the area where she was now living needed someone to deliver people's mail and thought Wei could take on the position. The young woman didn't know what to say and pondered for a minute. Her father seemed to be serious and wouldn't help her at all. Her credit cards were useless, and her house had no provisions except for the basket Fang had brought out of sheer generosity. Wei had no idea how that would work, but she felt obliged to accept the offer. Being a mail carrier turned out to be an easier job than Wei had imagined. She would need to go to a specific post in the region to pick up the mail and then deliver it throughout the village perimeter. There weren't many residences around, but they were somewhat distant from each other, as there were many farms and ranches. In the first week, it took her a whole day to go around the perimeter. She couldn't navigate the dirt roads in the area properly, as they all seemed the same at first. But Wei didn't give up, feeling that she needed the money that job would yield. Gradually, she got the hang of the work, and in just one morning, she could deliver all the mail. She had never received a letter and didn't know what it felt like. Working in Tongren, she discovered how people actually felt happy when they received a letter from a loved one or about an important matter, and also how they could become nervous and irritable when the news wasn't good or when taxes increased. Realizing that her work was useful to those people made Wei feel good about herself. One day, as she passed by one of the houses in the area, the young woman noticed something strange in the window. Wei's attention was drawn to a girl about 7 years old, standing on the windowsill. Without hesitation, the young woman ran to the house. What she saw inside left her stunned. The floor was almost completely covered with empty beer bottles and cigarette butts. It seemed like the house hadn't been properly cleaned in months. Wei carefully walked around the mess and approached the hanging girl. She told her to stay calm as she hugged her to remove her from that dangerous situation. There was no one else in the house except for this child, so she decided to take her to her own house. The girl's name was Li Chen, and upon asking Fang about the girl, Wei learned that her mother's name was Xin Chen and she raised her alone. There were rumors that Xin had become pregnant by some truck driver who used to pass through the town transporting cattle. The woman was rumored to enjoy drinking and to be seen at the loud parties in the outskirts. Wei hugged the girl. Fang said she would ask the other residents if anyone had any idea where Xin was, But at that moment, the best thing to do would be to call the police. Apparently, it had been a long time since Li had eaten. Bread, fruits, milk, and a snack served by Fang were devoured almost instantly by the girl. Whei couldn't believe she had found the girl alone and abandoned. Her eyes were filled with emotion. What if she hadn't passed by the house? What would have happened to the child? When Li seemed satisfied, Whei put her in an extra bed in Fang's house. Shortly after, Whei went to the local police station and explained the situation. The officer who handled the case was a determined and friendly young man named Jian, who offered to help. The first thing Jian did was put Xin, Li's mother, on the missing persons list and issued a bulletin to state police stations about her disappearance. Xin was found 12 days later, living in a house up north with 2 other men. Upon arrival, the police quickly realized that the woman was under the influence of drugs. Abandonment and drug use would certainly be enough reason for the town of Tongren to remove the custody of the girl from her mother and place her in an orphanage. When Officer Jian told Whei this, the Zhang heiress was stunned. She had lived with Li all those days and had grown attached to the girl. Moreover, she thought it would be an unfair ending for an innocent child who had no control over her mother's vices. To Whei, Li was already like a younger sister. As soon as the officer left her house, Whei went to Fang's house and said, in a determined tone, that she wanted to adopt Li. The elderly woman was taken aback, but liked the idea. "You're doing the right thing, dear," she said. "It won't be easy for Li. She will miss her mother, but she doesn't deserve an orphanage." In 3 months, Whei had obtained custody of Li. Whei began to deliver mail in more distant districts as well, so she would earn a better salary to meet the girl's needs. Fang was always around and helped whenever she could. Even Jian occasionally appeared to see if everything was going well. After all, he had followed that case from the beginning. Fang suspected that the policeman was interested in the young woman, but Whei had many other things on her mind at the moment and was truly dedicated to them. It was as if she didn't even remember the past, when she was nothing but a spoiled girl and the daughter of a millionaire. But one day, after coming home from delivering all the mail in 3 different districts and hugging Li, Whei was surprised by the arrival of a Mercedes. She hadn't thought about it for months, but upon seeing the parked car, she knew who was there after so long without news. But Whei didn't feel resentful or hateful. Now she was happy. She took Li by the hand and ran out shouting, "Daddy!" Once out of the car, Mr. Zhang looked astonished. It definitely wasn't the reception he expected. Whei hugged him tightly and asked Li to also hug Grandpa. The millionaire didn't know what to believe. Was it true that his daughter was being affectionate after so long? He felt his eyes fill with tears and hugged his daughter and the little girl. He kissed Wei's forehead and hair emotionally. He realized that leaving her to live on a remote farm had undoubtedly changed her perception of life and reality. However, Mr. Zhang also realized that he had made a mistake in trying to arrange a marriage for her. Without Whei expecting it, he looked deep into her eyes and said, "My daughter, I'm sorry." Embraced, the 3 of them entered the small house. They were a family again. Whei was finally ready to return to the city, if she so wished. It was a scene that could have come from one of those emotional movies, where family ties strengthen after a series of challenges. Emotion overflowed in that moment of reconciliation between father and daughter, while Li watched everything with her innocent, curious eyes. Mr. Zhang, now aware of past mistakes, hugged his daughter tenderly, feeling a mixture of relief and remorse. It was evident that their experience on the farm had changed not only Whei, but also himself. The simple life, away from the luxuries of the big city, had taught valuable lessons to both of them. The presence of the Mercedes there, a symbol of the world Whei had left behind, was tangible proof that she was willing to start anew. Her smile radiated hope and determination. Now, more than ever, She was ready to write a new chapter of her life, free from the shackles of the past. Meanwhile, Li, the little girl who had crossed Whei's path unexpectedly, now found in her new family the affection and protection she so desperately needed. Destiny had been kind in guiding her there, where she would find a home filled with love and care. As the afternoon descended upon that tranquil farm, a sense of harmony and happiness enveloped everyone present. There, in that humble abode, they discovered that true happiness lies in simplicity and family unity.